quick formal introduction on my end, guys. My name is Mr.SHOAIB. I will be your cybersecurity trainer for the entire duration of the course. Okay, I've been working in this domain since the last 7 years or so. And again, I've been training students since the last 5 years, I would say, around the time of COVID itself, since then till today. And again, I work for this institute, Durga Soft Solutions, and a couple other institutes as well. And the same framework, and again, in an institute in Bangalore and in Mumbai as well. Okay. And the demo that we are going to take today is on a course called Certified Ethical Hacking version 13. Now, this is one of the fundamental courses that people usually take up in order to understand what cybersecurity is. So, to get into this domain, the first go to course I would say is Certified Ethical Hacking. This is created by an organization called EC Council, a very well recognized organization based in United States. Okay. And again, this organization runs a lot of certification programs for the domain of cybersecurity. Okay. And the first certification program that they suggest for people to get into cybersecurity is this one, Certified Ethical Hacking. Okay. So now we'll start this demo with the definition of what hacking is and what ethical hacking is and how they are different from one another. Because a lot of students have a misconception that these terms are one and the same. Okay, they are similar. But no, there's a huge difference between hacking and ethical hacking. We'll talk about that now. Okay. And before I do so, a quick check, guys. Let me check my system audio as well. Yep. Okay. Seems to be fine. Now, let's go with the definition of hacking first. So, when we talk about hacking, guys, this is the procedure of trying to gain access to information systems. Now, what I mean by that phrase, gaining access to information systems, is if I were a hacker, and let's say if I hacked your computer or your mobile phone, it basically means I've complete remote control of your device now. So on your phone or on your laptop, I can browse the entire data. I can modify that data. If I want, I can delete that data or I can exfiltrate that data, basically download that data on my system from yours. Okay. And all of this is done without the permission and without the knowledge of the organization or the person owning those devices. Okay. So without your knowledge and without your consent, I would try to modify or gain access to your data. Okay. Or even delete it as well if I want to. Okay. And this is more often than not performed by hackers for their own benefit. So once I've remotely downloaded your data from your system to mine, I can now sell that data if it is private or confidential to others on the internet. Okay. Or sometimes hackers are so mischievous they can even do it just for fun. So just for the sake of fun, I could also try deleting the data and causing you some trouble. Okay. Now, if hacking is such a malicious task, if it is such an illegal activity, why do we have a course called ethical hacking? And how is this getting ethical in the first place? So, to define ethical hacking, guys, this is the procedure of trying to find vulnerabilities. So, this terminology called vulnerability is something that will keep coming across a lot in the upcoming sessions as well. To define a vulnerability, it's a loophole, it's a flaw in the security or the logic of the application. So, whatever applications you use, whatever softwares you use, these applications and softwares might have some bugs in them. Okay. Now, this application could be as small as a video player to as big as your operating system itself. And these bugs or vulnerabilities allow hackers to take advantage of them and try to perform various attacks. Okay. So, your job in ethical hacking or as an ethical hacker is to find these vulnerabilities or loopholes in the information systems. And this is done with the consent or with the knowledge of the organization owning those systems. So you work hand in hand with the organization, you take their permission, you follow all the rules and regulations, and then you perform ethical hacking, finding the vulnerabilities. Now, why do you do that? So that you can report these vulnerabilities back to the company. Okay. So once a vulnerability is found and once it is reported to the organization back, the organization will apply the necessary security updates or the patches. And that would prevent any other hacker or cyber criminal from taking advantage or exploiting those vulnerabilities or flaws. And thereby, you're protecting the organization from any further cyber threats or any further harm. Okay. Now, depending on these two definitions of hacking and ethical hacking, we can also categorize the types of hackers. Okay. So, firstly, you have the black hat hacker, then the gray hat hacker, and then the white hat hacker. Okay. Your black hat hacker first is someone who performs hacking for their own benefit or for fun without asking for consent. And these people are also commonly known as cyber criminals or cyber attackers. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, we have white hat hackers. White hat hackers are people who abide by the laws and policies of the company, and they work for securing the company's infrastructure from these cyber criminals. And they're also commonly known as cybersecurity professionals or ethical hackers or penetration testers. And in between, there's a third category called gray hat hackers. Now, these people have both the qualities of a black hat as well as a white hat. Like a black hat hacker, they don't ask for permission first, but once they find a vulnerability, they report it back to the company. Okay. But everything that these do, again, these gray hat hackers do, is not always free. Okay, so they try to report these vulnerabilities in return for a personal financial benefit. So they ask for a reward in return for reporting those vulnerabilities without misusing them. And that reward is also commonly known as sometimes a bounty. So these people are also known as bug bounty hunters. They hunt for bugs in systems or in applications or in the source code of the application or wherever it be, and they try to report it back for minimal price. Okay, so they're hunting for bugs in return for a bounty, and therefore they're also commonly known as bug bounty hunters. Okay. Now, no matter what category of a hacker you take, whether you talk about black hat hackers or gray hat hackers or white hat hackers for that matter, all of these three, again, individuals are professionals who perform hacking or ethical hacking in a certain procedure. And that procedure is called as cyber kill chain. Some organizations also refer to this as hacking cycle, guys. So do not get confused. This term cyber kill chain was created by an organization called Lockheed Martin. Okay. You can do some research on that. Okay. So this was basically derived from a military terminology, kill chain, to perform an attack on organizations also. But again, when you talk about cyber kill chain, this is the procedure that hackers follow step by step to perform a successful cyber attack. Okay. And the same knowledge of this procedure also allows cybersecurity professionals or ethical hackers to understand how these attacks are being performed and to again detect them or prevent them at every level of the organization. Okay. So the procedure followed by hackers or ethical hackers is pretty similar. Very minimal amount of changes here or there. And the cyber kill chain consists of five important steps. There's firstly information gathering, then there's scanning, then there's gaining access, then there's maintaining access, and then there's reporting or clearing traces. If you clearly observe, only in the last phase I have two different terminologies, reporting or clearing traces. Reason being, no matter what category of a hacker you are, white hat, gray hat, or black hat, first four steps are exactly identical. There is no change in the procedure in the first four steps. What varies or what changes is only the end result. If you are an ethical hacker, you report the vulnerabilities back to the organization. On the other hand, if you're a cyber criminal, you don't report anything. You try to remove the evidence of your actions. Okay, you try to erase the logs. Okay, or delete footprints. Okay, and that way you're trying to clear the evidence of your actions, which in simple terms is called as clearing traces. Now we're going to talk about each of these terminologies one by one, guys, a bit more in a briefer manner. Okay, but before we progress, any questions, any doubts up to this point? Am I going too fast? Am I? Do you want me to slow down by any chance, or is the pace fine? Any questions up to this point? Anyone? Jagdish, Kavya, Rahul, Sujata, Vijay. Hello, guys. I hope I'm audible. Let's not keep this just one-sided. Again, interactions are very much welcome. So, any questions? Please do not hesitate to let me know your questions, guys. The more you hesitate, the more you would lose. Okay. So, it's important to ask questions, and that might clarify a lot of doubts for the others as well. Okay. If you do have questions, feel free to let me know. Okay. I do not mind interruptions at all. Okay. And again, if you have no questions, it's usually one of the two cases. Either you have understood everything or you have not understood anything at all. Okay. So it's important to ask questions, and I hope it is always the first scenario if you don't have any. Okay. Uh, okay, all good. Perfect. So moving on. Let's talk about each of these phases now one by one so you have a better idea what our course is going to revolve around and what topics we'll be discussing throughout the course. Okay. So the first topic we have is information gathering. Let me move to the next slide here. Yeah. Now, this is also commonly known as reconnaissance or footprinting, guys. It's different terminologies for the same phase. Okay. You can call it information gathering, you can call it reconnaissance, you can call it footprinting. All of these mean one and the same thing. Okay. And the objective of this phase is to gather as much data as possible or research as much data as possible about the target organization. And please note, all of this information is obtained from third party websites. You do not contact the organization in any way. You don't let them know that you're getting information about them. All the data is obtained from other resources or other websites on the internet. Okay. But the main question that arises here is what kind of information are we trying to gather? And that also has been mentioned on the screen slide, okay, or the slide screen. So you need the IP addresses, you need the network blocks, you need the whose records, the DNS records, the domains, the subdomains, the OS information, employee details, contact numbers, email addresses, usernames, passwords, any data which has been leaked in data breaches, etc., etc. And believe it or not, all of this data is readily available on the internet. All you need to know is where we can obtain this information from. What are those websites from where we'll try to get this information? Okay. Now, do not worry about certain terminologies here, guys. You might not understand what are whose records, or what are DNS records, or what are domains, what are subdomains, etc., etc. Do not worry. As we get into our course, we'll learn each of these terminologies from scratch. Okay. And I'll explain clearly what they mean and why they are relevant. Okay. Once all of this information has been gathered, that is utilized in the next phase, which is scanning, guys. Also commonly known as enumeration. And the objective here is to get some extra data, but by making active connections. Earlier, we got the data passively. Here, we get the data actively. So we try to, again, basically as an attacker or an ethical hacker, whatever IPs we obtain, whatever domains we obtain, whatever subdomains we obtain, we try to make connections on those. We try to make direct connections and we try to get some extra data. Okay. So to understand scanning, we can break it down in three smaller parts. There's network scanning, port scanning, and vulnerability scanning. Network scanning is to figure out in the target organization how many devices exist. So how many servers do they have? How many client operating system devices do they have? How many firewalls do they have? How many routers do they have? How many switches do they have? So getting a topology of their internal network is called as network scanning. Once you know what devices are active and running, on those devices you perform port scanning to figure out what ports are open and what services are running on. And once you know what services are running, finally you perform a vulnerability scan to figure out if any of those vulnerable services can be attacked in any certain way. Okay. And if your port scanning is missing out any ports, if you want to find out more ports with more vulnerabilities, you can go for vulnerability scanning again. Okay. So these are the three phases in scanning. It's a step-by-step procedure. You're finding the active devices first. On the devices, you're finding the ports open and the services running. And then you're finally finding the vulnerabilities on each of those services. Okay. Now, once all this data has been gathered, the next phase is nothing but gaining access. The phase where the real hacking occurs, all the data that was obtained earlier in the earlier phases of reconnaissance or footprinting is all used over here to perform, again, if any vulnerabilities can be attacked. Okay. So attackers use the vulnerabilities found in the earlier phases and they try to gain access to the system or the application or the entire network. So this is one of the most important modules in the course, guys. Covers a vast variety of topics. I might not be able to explain all of them today. Okay. But a brief overview. We'll talk about system hacking, where we talk how to crack the passwords of any device. We talk about malwares, what are malicious softwares, how do you use malwares to attack systems, how do you defend your system from malwares, how do you detect those malwares in your system which are hidden? What are the various network attacks, denial of service attack, man in the middle attack, again, social engineering attacks, Wi-Fi router attacks. So all of these attacks allow you to capture data of others in your network or crack the Wi-Fi passwords, etc., etc. Okay. Then we have hacking web servers and web applications, attacking the face of the webs of the organization, websites, and the web servers they are hosted on. Okay. And then we have some evasion techniques as well. How do you evade security measures? So if the organization has firewalls or intrusion detection systems or intrusion prevention systems, how do you bypass those and get information about the organization? We'll learn that as well. Then there's vulnerability assessment. So once a vulnerability is shown to you through the Nessus report, to a vulnerability scanner, you can't just blindly believe it. You have to verify that. You have to attack on that vulnerability. So that is vulnerability assessment. Trying to attack every vulnerability manually to figure out which is working, which is not. Okay. And finally, we have hacking mobile phones as well to attack Android phones and get remote connections. So the main agenda over here, guys, in this phase is to attack every single endpoint, as small as a mobile phone to as big as a web application server or a database or a firewall. Okay. So you talk about system hacking, you talk about network hacking, you talk about social engineering attacks, you talk about Wi-Fi attacks, you talk about hacking web servers or web applications, attacking IDS, IPS systems, attacking mobile phones. So every single endpoint that is supposed to be tested in an organization is listed out here. We'll practically learn each of those techniques. Okay. Once after this is done, we have two small modules left out: maintaining access and reporting or clearing traces. Very simple and short modules. One module here, maintaining access, is to maintain persistent connections, which means once I've got access to your device, even if you restart your system, I should still be connected to you. That's called a persistent connection. So we learn how to hackers create persistent connections. And finally, we have reporting or clearing traces where, as an ethical hacker, you report the vulnerabilities to the organization, give them solutions to remediate as well, or eradicate those vulnerabilities and make the system secure again. On the other hand, if you're a black hat hacker, you don't report anything. You try to remove the evidences, deleting the log files, etc., etc. So we'll learn that as well. So the entire course is going to run in two simple tracks. How do you perform these attacks and how do you defend your organization from these same attacks? It's for a duration of 35 days where we have classes from Monday to Friday, every day for 1 hour each. Okay. And the first class starts tomorrow at 7 p.m. Okay. So you have a new batch starting tomorrow at 7 p.m. where we first cover the prerequisites. What are networking fundamentals? What are IP addresses? What are important protocols? Okay. Then we talk about the Linux commands. How do you install the lab setup? All that. Okay. So again, we'll learn everything from scratch. Nothing to worry as such. All the sessions are being recorded, and you will also be getting recordings on your Google Drive directly once you enroll. Okay. So tomorrow we talk about the first topic, which is networking fundamentals, guys. If you did like the demo today, if you found it interesting, and if you're interested to continue further classes, you can join the demo as well from tomorrow itself. Okay. That would be the first class on the new topic called networking fundamentals. Okay. So yeah, that's that. Any further questions or doubts on your end, guys? Do you have any questions? Kavya, Rahul, Sujata, Vijay. Okay, guys. Assuming no questions, but if you do have any, please do not hesitate to let me know, guys. It's important to ask questions. Okay, things get clarified a lot more fundamentally. Okay. So tomorrow we take the first session of networking where we talk about IP addresses and again what is the category of IP. Okay, how many categories do you have? What are public IPs, private IPs, classes, etc. etc. We'll talk about all that in session tomorrow. Okay. So that's that. Nothing further. Thanks for joining the session today, guys, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow at the same time at 7 o'clock.
I Hello.
Oh, Kavya, I can hear you now.
Yeah, after learning this, what role we will get in cybersecurity
Good question.
after
So you can
learning
start
this?
applying for job roles such as security analyst. You can start applying for penetration tester. You can start applying for vulnerability assessment or penetration testing, VABT. Okay. So those are all the job roles you can apply for: security analyst, security consultant, web application penetration tester, network penetration tester. Okay, and VABT, vulnerability assessment and penetration tester. Those are the commonly used or available job roles. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
right. Any other questions, guys?
And one more, any certification we need to do after joining
Uh,
this?
Depends again if it's all on your interest, Kavya. And if you're applying for a certain company and if the company is asking for the certification, you would do it. If not, nothing as such mandatory. You would get a course completion certificate from Durgasoft. But if you want to get the certificate from EC Council, you'll have to write an exam, CEH exam. That's quite expensive again. Usually students write it after they have gotten into the company, and the company would be sponsoring those certifications for us. Okay. But again, if you do not have a company to sponsor, you'll have to put it out of your own pocket. Okay. And I think it's around $500 or something. Quite an expensive exam. But yeah, it's quite easy with the preparation throughout the course. Okay. So again, not mandatory. There's no requirement of a mandatory certification. You'll just be getting a course completion certificate. That should be sufficient. If the company that you're trying to apply for is asking for it, then you would have to write the certification exam after the course.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions, guys? Okay. Assuming no questions, I think we can exit the session here, guys. And we can connect back tomorrow at the same time. Okay. Bye bye. Have a good day. Thanks for joining the session today, guys. We'll connect tomorrow and talk about networking fundamentals. A very important class, first class of the entire sessions. Please do join without fail. Okay, guys. So yeah, let's get started without any further ado. We will be taking up the first topic today, which is networking fundamentals. This is the first prerequisite required for cybersecurity as well. Okay. Again, when you're working in cybersecurity domain, it's important to know this concept of networking and IP addresses and the various networking protocols as well, such as DNS protocol, DHCP protocol, TCP, UDP. All these concepts are quite important again when you talk about networking, because a very crucial aspect of cybersecurity is your logs, your various device logs. And in these logs, one important point that you would always notice is communication between various IP addresses. So it's important to understand what these IP addresses are, what are the categories of these IP addresses, okay, and how do the IPs are, I mean, how these IPs classified. Okay, so we're going to talk about all that in our sessions today and in the upcoming ones for networking. Okay. So let's get started with the definition of networking, guys. So when you talk about networking fundamentals, there are three important definitions to what is networking, what are networks, and what are hosts. When you talk about networking specifically, this is the practice of connecting information devices with each other. Okay, so in an organization or even in your home network, you have multiple various information devices. Your laptops, your mobile phones, your routers, your smart TVs, your cameras, etc., etc. Right? So the process of connecting these information devices with each other so that they can share their resources or data is called as networking. Okay. Now, in that collection, okay, so that entire collection of those devices itself is called a network. So a network is a collection of these interconnected devices that can communicate with each other, that can transmit data to each other. Okay. And each of those devices in that network is called as a host. So host refers to any individual device connected in that network that can transmit or receive data. As mentioned, examples of those are your computers, your printers, your routers, your mobile phones, your smart TVs, your smart watches, etc., etc. Okay.